it may be the start of the new year, but it's not the start of the new financial year for many. I still remember that, like, January came in thinking, all right, so my bonus is going to get paid out in March. And I know that I'm going to have my review because, you know, the review season, appraisal's coming along and people are going to talk about that and everything else. And every single year I was determined to get the pay rise that I wanted. I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to just speak it up and I'm going to say, I deserve this and this and this and this and this. And there were two things that usually happened. One was this confidence that I had about demanding this pay rise started to dissipate the closer I got to the conversation. Because the closer I got to the conversation, the more patently aware I became of being the only black woman in my department. When I say the company, I just mean like where I was, not globally. Being, you know, the only black woman there, thinking about, well, if they don't like it, what I say, what am I going to do? I don't want to rock the boat. I want to keep this job. I need the security. All the reasons went through my head as to why I didn't feel confident anymore, why I didn't feel like I could speak up. So internally, I'd go into that and I'd say, yeah, you know, and it'd also be good to get a pay rise. Then you'd be told, oh yeah, you are getting a pay rise. And then you'd realise that the number after tax, you're like, what am I meant to do with that? But you don't say anything. You go, okay, thank you. Because you also want to be seen as being, I'm going to say, not difficult. You don't want to be that difficult person. You don't want to be that person who creates. And then a lot of the times, it was also then finding out, you know, friends you have in the department or you have in the company, you know, how was your bonus? And it wasn't that you were talking exact figures, you were talking percentages. And when you find out that your percentage pay rise was 1% and someone else's was 30%, and you're like, what? And then you say to yourself, the next year, well, you know, this year, I'm going to make it up, I'm going to make it up, I'm going to make it up. And what I realised is that I hadn't been strategic. And when I say strategic, I don't mean kissing up. I mean, I hadn't explicitly shown my value. So for one, and there was one particular comment that I'll never forget, which was I'd always spoken, when I said spoken, when I described my achievements, I was very much collaborative, right? We achieved this. And I didn't think that that was a bad thing because I thought being collaborative showed, you know, leadership potential. But actually, when it comes to your appraisal, the feedback I got was, I want to know what you've done. What have you done in particular? And I was like, okay. Because part of me was scared of being seen to be pushy. So when you're thinking about how do you negotiate your pay rise, it's also making sure, because there's going to be an internal fight, especially if you're the only one in your department. There's going to be that I don't want to be the difficult black woman because you may have raised other issues. You don't want to be the difficult black woman full stop because you worry about your career progression. But the reality is that words such as strategic, number one. Number two, highlighting your achievements. But number three, also making it your business to understand the strategic element of what your team is trying to achieve, what the company is trying to achieve. And first and foremost, go prepared. That was the one thing that I wasn't always prepared. Because in many cases, the focus is on the promotion. Because we know promotion of job also increases your salary, right? But part of that is negotiating and being aware of everything that's going on. So you focus on the promotion, yes, but sometimes the promotion is maybe 1-2 years ahead, but you do want a pay rise in the meantime. You still want to show that progression. And it's difficult because the confidence in having the conversation always makes you feel insecure. It's horrible. And I used to hate it. I used to get heart palpitations because before the bonus and pay review, you didn't know which way it could go. You hoped for the pay rise. And when you were disappointed, like when you were happy with the pay rise, you're like, yes, great, great, great. But when you were disappointed, and what I also learned is, and this is the irony, I also learned that still a lot of guys, even when they're happy with their pay rise, they still ask for more. And guess what? A lot of them get it. Why? Because they're not shy about saying, this is what I've done and this is why I deserve it. And I think that's the element in us as Black women, is that we have this, you know, what do they call it? I don't want this double bind, right? It's the being ignored, but at the same time, high visibility. It's that paradoxical one. You're ignored to a certain point, but in certain situations, you're very, very visible. And pay rise conversations, bonus conversations, appraisal conversations are where we sit firmly in that pocket. Because our achievements in the year are usually soaked up into the team. We don't necessarily want to speak about them directly ourselves. We don't necessarily want to say, hey, I've done this and this and this and this, because it feels too self-aggrandizing. And then when it gets to the point of having the discussion, the decision's already been made and you feel as though you can't do anything. There's nothing wrong in challenging it sometimes. There's nothing wrong in challenging it sometimes. We know the conversations are separate. We have the one conversation where you talk about what you've achieved, what you've done, you know, what you've done throughout the year, what was good, what was bad, the feedback. And then the separate conversation is bonus and pay rise. And no matter how separate they want to keep them, the reality is that they are interlinked. So that's also what has to be kept at the front of your mind, is that when you're going into both of these conversations, that during your appraisal, you're bringing to the fore everything that you've done, all the reasons why you should make it to the next stage, all the reasons why you understand the objectives of your team, your personal objectives, all of that good stuff. So that when this part comes, the talking about the cash, talking about your pay rise, your base, that you can say, well, hold on. Based on all of the stuff that I've done, that we agreed, that you signed off on, how is it then that I'm only getting this much when you signed off and agreed that I was good at this? No matter how separate it's presented as being, it's not. It's joined together, and it's that work in progress where you actively manage that. So one of the things, I think I even spoke about it in another video that I did about getting the promotion you deserve. One of the things that I did was I started to document every month the things that I'd done. I decided to send it then at that time to my bosses to make sure, like, A, they saw it, but B, you know, it was an amalgamation, you know, coming at the end of the year. So that it becomes almost impossible. But the one thing I will caveat all of this to say is there's realistic expectations, right? That's the one thing. And when I can still remember when I first started out, I always, you know, it was my first year of working and I got my first pay rise. And I still remember thinking to myself, is that it? And then, you know, and sometimes we don't think about this because it's not explicitly said, but still, you know, I'm going to say it anyway. I didn't realize at the beginning that everything was calculated not in pounds terms, but, you know, in percentage terms. So that's the other part. That's the other part you have to figure out is what can you realistically expect in percentage terms as a promotion. And we know that it varies. If you're in a profit generating sector department, we know that that's different to if you're in a non-profit generating department, right? But the question is, there is that calculation that you also have to do, which is what is my, based on a percentage calculation, my ideal, right, or let's say my aspirational pay rise, but still within a realistic bandwidth, right? My absolute minimum and my this is disrespectful. I've had those disrespectful ones, and I'll say honestly, I took it, I didn't say anything, and I was frustrated. So we also know that not being paid our worth leads to frustration. So it's pay, and this is one of the things sometimes that companies fail to understand, is that being well paid motivates you to want to do more, not less. It is unfortunately a self-fulfilling prophecy. Demotivating people, asking them to work more is bad business protocol. But and anyway, that's like another conversation. So the three main takeaways I would say is, you know, do your research and be prepared before you go into the conversation. Make sure you're aware of all the strategic objectives from top to bottom and how they relate to you. And 3, build a case. Build a case that is provable, like show what you have personally done. And the last one is, I know I said 3, but this is like, the last one is, don't be ashamed if you're scared in your mind or inside when you have the conversation, because it takes time to be able to build up the courage, and it almost takes all of that year. And the reason why I say build a case is because when you build a case, it feels a lot more stable. It feels like a stable conversation, as opposed to I just deserve a pay rise, which no one listens to anyway, right? Because then for all the nerves, you know that you're presenting a case that hopefully isn't one to be discussed. It's proven they agree it. But it also makes the conversation more pleasant for you, because it ain't easy. And, you know, I spent forever and a day negotiating it, trying to get it right, getting it right, sometimes getting it wrong sometimes. Because the other point is, I realized, and this is the big con, and I saw this in action, and this is why I tell you this is the big con. You believe at the point that you're handed the letter that it is absolutely impossible to complain about your pay rise. It's impossible to give feedback about your bonus. You believe that. But what I want to tell you is, it's not. It's not absolutely final. There will be 2 to 3 days before they actually press the button on the pay run for it to land into your bank account 2 weeks later. I learned that the hard way because I found out that someone had gone back and said, no, and had it changed. So it's not final. And that's part and parcel of the game, right? You believe it's final. You believe there's no way for you to be able to give feedback. You believe that this is it. It's not. So, let me know how, I hope, or I say, no, I'm going to correct that. I'm wishing everybody I'm wishing you all a fruitful bonus pay review season. And if you haven't started to put your case together, start to put it together now. Even if you're scared, start to put it together now, just because it's a good practice. So even if you don't implement it this year because it feels scary and, you know, there's so many other things going on, I understand. There is absolutely no criticism, no judgment, but start to get into the habit of doing it, because the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And when it becomes a habit, you come closer to getting what you want, as opposed to seeing everybody else successfully negotiate what it is they want and you're left on the sidelines. So have a great day, and as I said, happy negotiating or happy discussion, and good luck in bonus and pay review season. Bye.